Hey guys, I just wanted to say a quick thank you for the feedback on my experimental narration video. I've since unlisted the video as my next videos won't be tests but rather actual content. And as a side note, I'm currently fundraising for a better audio recording setup, so if you're interested in helping me out in my future audio endeavors, then my PayPal will be in the description below. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the video. This is r/nolsleep. I have a large collection of books, and in order to continue with my obsession, I frequent a lot of bookstores that I stumble upon. I like going into places like thrift stores, or a few record shops in my area that sell used books at discounted prices. I do sometimes purchase new copies, but honestly, used books are my favorites. It's just my personal opinion, but I tend to gravitate towards the more worn-out look that used books have, not to mention the lower price tag. It's a simple way to grow my collection without going broke. A few days ago, I was out running errands and I decided to drive a few minutes to a new coffee shop that had opened in a nearby city. I had seen my friends and family members raving about it all over social media, and since there seemed to be a grocery store near their shop anyway, I decided to take the slightly longer drive over to see what all the hype was about. I spotted the coffee shop rather easily, as it was a pretty large green and black building in the middle of a shopping square. As I pulled up to the drive-thru, a bookstore in the corner of the square caught my attention. Once I ordered and received my coffee, I parked in front of the bookstore, wanting to check it out before going grocery shopping. It was a pretty old-looking building, which was odd since the surrounding shops all had a newer, minimalistic look to them. It was called Novel Books, according to the large peeling sign out front, and they were apparently also having a 60% off sale. As I walked up, I could see the rows and rows of bookshelves that covered the entire inside of the store. I reached the door and pulled it open, stepping into the store. It was much colder in the shop than I had expected, and had I known this beforehand, I probably would have brought a sweater with me. The walls inside the store were painted black and had a few random movie and music posters randomly pinned up. There were only 2 cash registers at the front of the store, and there was one woman standing in front of one, leaning against the counter while she looked down at her phone. Her hair was split up into a few different sections that were braided and twisted into small buns on top of her head, each one with different colored braids. Both her arms were covered in tattoos, and she was covered in jewelry. She glanced up when she heard me walk in and put her phone away. "Welcome to Novel," she said, waving at me. I waved back as I made my way to the closest shelf and began scanning the books. They didn't appear to be categorized in any way, which was a bit of a hassle, but one that I didn't really mind. I spent a few minutes looking up and down the shelves near the front of the store before moving around to the ones behind. When I turned around and started to look across the shelves, I could see out of the corner of my eye that the worker was watching me from the front of the store. I thought it was a bit odd, but we were also the only 2 people in the store at the moment, so I figured she was just trying to make sure I wouldn't steal. I spent a while making my way towards the back of the store as I sipped on my coffee, which was helping me to stay a bit warm despite the freezing temperature inside the store. When I was about halfway into the store, I noticed that it was slightly darker towards the back and that most of the lights were either turned off or just not working. I could still see pretty well though, so I continued. I could tell that it was still getting slightly darker the further into the store that I went, and I decided to turn around to get a look at just how dark it had gotten. That's when I noticed that the layout of the store changed further towards the back. Instead of the bookshelves being placed side by side to create rows, they were arranged to make multiple hallways with more than one point of entry, sort of like a maze. I figured it was some sort of quirky thing the store did to draw attention, and once I got to one of the halls, I hesitated a bit before finally deciding to try to make my way around the maze. As I walked around the small walkways, I thought about how much larger the store was than I had originally thought. From the outside, it seemed like it would be the size of a small bakery or something similar. But once I was in, I could see that it was fairly large and about the size of a larger grocery store. I continued to walk through the maze of small shelves, starting to notice the heavy silence in the store. I hadn't noticed it before, but there was no music playing or anything, and it was instead dead silent. Even my footsteps were silent due to the carpet in the area. I had picked out 3 books that I was thinking about buying and decided that I had enough of the weird dark maze thing inside the store, and so I began to make my way back towards the front of the store. This is when I realized my mistake. I had been so concentrated on the books that I hadn't paid any attention to the path I had taken to get here. I freaked out for a bit before I decided to just start walking. It's not like they would make the maze impossible to escape from, right? What good would it do to have people stuck inside your store? I tried to keep calm as I attempted to walk back to the front of the store, but I couldn't stop my mind from creating ridiculous scenarios to spike my anxiety. What if this was a human trafficking front? What if the worker was going to hunt me down and kill me? What if I wasn't supposed to make it back out? I wasn't sure how long I had been walking, but it seemed like far too long. I had only been in the shop for about 20 minutes, and there was no way I had gotten this far from the entrance. It seemed like the longer I stayed in the store, the darker it got too. Eventually, I started to worry that I was just going in circles, and I thought about calling for help, but I didn't want to seem dramatic, so I decided to at least try a bit harder to get out by myself first. I stopped at an intersection of shelves and looked towards the shelf to my left. The first book on the shelf that was eye level was a copy of Wuthering Heights. I grabbed the book and pulled it out of the shelf a few inches. If I was going in a circle, I would end up here and see the book and could use this to figure a way out. I took a right and walked down that small walkway until I reached the next hall. I glanced at the shelf to my right and pulled out the copy of Frankenstein, then took another right. I kept doing this, taking a few lefts and rights, before I eventually ended up at the intersection with the Wuthering Heights copy. This time, I took a left and followed the same pattern as last time, pulling out books so I would know if I had been down that road yet. I did this a few times, making sure I took a different turn each time, but somehow, I always ended up back at the Wuthering Heights shelf. I had taken every possible route and I still wasn't able to get out of the damn maze. I decided to start calling for help, ignoring the embarrassment of having to have an employee guide a grown woman out of a store. "Hello?" I called, waiting for an answer. I heard nothing in response, so I shouted a bit louder after a few seconds. "Hello?" Still no response, not even footsteps coming in my direction. "Is anybody there? I'm still back here and I think I'm lost," I called. Silence. I reached out to the bookshelf in front of me and rocked it back and forth a bit, trying to see how sturdy it was. Eventually, I was able to push it with enough force to knock it backward, and subsequently, knocked down all the shelves behind it. I felt really bad for making a mess, but I didn't know any other way to get out. I could hear the sound of the shelves falling in the distance and watched until I was eventually able to see the front of the store again. Relieved, I made my way to the register. The employee was still standing there, seemingly unaware of the mess I had just made, looking down at her phone. "Sorry about the mess, I kind of freaked out back there," I said when I neared the register. She didn't reply. I walked closer to her and waved my hand in front of her face, but she didn't move. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. Still no response. I set the books that I was still carrying down on the conveyor belt and slowly backed away towards the exit. That's when I noticed it was pitch black out. No sunlight, no moon, no stars, no streetlights, nothing. Just thick darkness that extended out forever. I tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. It was like it had been sealed shut or something. I pulled as hard as I could, but nothing happened. At this point, I was really freaking out and desperate to get out of the shop. I tried kicking the door open and throwing books at the windows to break the glass, but it was no use. The entire time that I was attempting to escape, the employee was standing in the same exact spot, unmoving. I don't know how long I've been in here. I've tried to keep track, but it's hard when you don't even have sunlight or moonlight as a reference of time. I have my phone with me and I've tried making calls, but they won't go through. My battery is dying and soon I won't have any method of communication. So I guess this is my last resort. I hope someone sees this. Not just so I can get help, but so they know to stay away from this place if anyone ever sees it again. Ever since I was old enough to take showers on my own, I've been warned about closing my eyes in the shower. It sounds like such a ridiculous thing to be warned about, and I will admit that I didn't take it as seriously as I should have, until I had a first-hand experience into what happens when you ignore this warning. The first time I did it, I was around 9 or 10 years old. I don't remember much except that I was standing there, washing my hair as my mother's voice played over and over again in my head, telling me not to close my eyes. As I thought about the things that might happen that were apparently so bad that nobody would even tell me about them, I began to feel freaked out, like I was being watched. Of course, wanting to be brave, I scoffed and closed my eyes. I only did it for about 2 seconds the first time. It was almost just a blink. When nothing happened, I did it for longer and kept doing that, gradually increasing the time that I had my eyes closed for. Once I kept my eyes closed for 10 seconds, I noticed that I could no longer feel the water hitting me from above. I stuck one hand out, but there was nothing. I remember slowly opening one eye to notice that I was no longer in my shower. I was in a weird abandoned pool in a dark, dirty building. The tile in the pool was covered in green plants and what appeared to be moss. I opened my other eye so I could take a look around and crossed my arms over my chest, extremely aware of the fact that I was exposed. I could hear something running above me, outside the pool, but I wasn't able to see anything. "Hello?" I called. Suddenly, I caught movement toward the left corner of the pool and I noticed the shape was running directly at me. I was frozen in place as the thing came closer and I realized it was another person, covered in the green plants and moss around us, wide-eyed. They ran directly at me and threw me back, pushing both of their hands against my chest. "Not yet!" they shouted. I was unable to tell if the voice was male or female, and the next thing I knew, there was a series of flashing lights that hurt my eyes. I squinted and noticed that my surroundings were changing from the old pool to my bathroom shower over and over again. It was starting to make me dizzy, and my vision went dark as I fell. When I woke up, I was in my shower, the water falling over me as I laid in the tub. My elbow and ribs hurt, most likely from the way I had fallen down. I got up, rinsed myself, and jumped out of the shower, dressing in a hurry, my clothing sticking to my damp skin. I was careful not to close my eyes for long periods of time after that. There were a few moments where I wasn't as careful as I should have been and got shampoo in my eyes. When that happened, I raced to rinse my eyes and hair as quickly as I could. But I would always see the old pool for a split second. It was just 1 second, and yet it was the most fear I have ever felt in my entire life. I'm 23 now, and I still try my hardest not to close my eyes in the shower. In fact, I try my best to shower as fast as possible, and sometimes when I'm extremely freaked out, I opt for washing my hair in my sink so that there's no way I'll accidentally get shampoo in my eyes. 2 days ago, I took a normal shower. Everything was fine and I was almost finished when I accidentally squirted body wash straight into my left eye. I felt my heartbeat speed up immediately as I held my face under the water. I frantically rinsed my eyes and face, trying to get the burning sensation out of my eyes so I could open it again. I closed them both for less than a second, and when I opened them again, the bathtub was changing underneath me. The white porcelain was morphing into the dirty, moss-covered tile of the old pool that I had seen in my nightmares since the first time I had seen it. I started freaking out as I finished rinsing my eye. I turned the shower water off and sped out of the shower, throwing myself through the curtain as I stepped out of the side, banging my shin against the side of the tub in the process. I grabbed my towel off the rack of the wall and wrapped it around me, limping out of the bathroom and into my bedroom where I closed and locked the door. I leaned against my bedroom door, trying to slow my breathing. After a few minutes, I got dressed and avoided the bathroom for the rest of the night. At around 2 in the morning, I awoke with a sudden urge to pee. I tried to ignore it, flipping over to my other side and closing my eyes, but the feeling only got stronger, and so I begrudgingly got up and walked into the bathroom. I pushed the door open and stood just outside the doorway, flipping the light switch on and staring at myself in the mirror above the sink. I closed my eyes and blinked a few times as my eyes adjusted to the sudden change in light. Finally, I stepped into the bathroom, leaving the door open behind me, and proceeded to do my business. As I was washing my hands, I could hear a weird noise coming from the bathtub. It almost sounded like water was running down the drain, which wasn't possible. There was no way there was still any water in there. I approached the tub and threw the shower curtain open to see that my tub and shower were gone. Instead of the porcelain tub and black tiled walls, there was now a portion of the old pool. I stared down at the small puddles of murky water and the different types of grass and plants that were growing in it. I looked up and scanned the area, once again hearing footsteps above ground, but I wasn't able to see anything. There were some old deteriorating benches and graffitied brick walls that surrounded the pool, as well as a few trees that had grown inside the building. I scanned the area for the person that I had seen the last time, but there didn't appear to be anyone around. At least, not at first. Unfortunately, I quickly noticed that the shrubbery that covered the bottom of the pool was uneven and bumpy, and I bent down to get a closer look. That's when I noticed that there were people buried underneath everything. The plants were sort of encasing the bodies, and I was able to make out the shapes of a few faces. I backed up, trying to stop myself from shouting and drawing any unwanted attention. I heard the sound again, and I realized that there was something out there making that sound. I shivered and threw the shower curtain closed again as I backed out of the bathroom. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night and was up again in about 3 hours. I forced myself to go into the bathroom again, where I noticed that this, whatever it was spreading and had now taken over about 2/3 of my bathroom. I walked out of the bathroom and grabbed my car keys and phone. I sped through my apartment, making my way to the front door. As soon as I threw it open, however, I was met with an old, overgrown clearing in the middle of the woods. Confused, I stepped outside far enough to get a look at my apartment. Instead of being on the 3rd floor of the complex, the building that stood before me was old and worn down, like its surroundings. There were vines and moss growing on the outside of it, and I could tell that parts of the building were beginning to fall off. I ran back inside, slamming the door shut. I've been inside ever since. Little by little, the abandoned pool and building have taken over my apartment. The only room left now is the kitchen. Eventually, I know that I'll be stuck here, forced to survive in whatever this place is. I've been trying to contact family members, friends, even the police for help, but none of my calls or texts have gone through. I'm not even sure this will end up anywhere. Even if it did, I'm not sure you could help. I guess this is better than not trying. There's something else here. I haven't seen the person that I saw years back when I was first here, but I can hear something outside. It sounds huge. Its footsteps shake the area and its shadow blocks out all of the light as it passes by the building. I don't think it knows I'm here yet. I don't want to think about what it might do when it becomes aware, but I know it will come for me soon. I have been cursed with the gift of reincarnation. I cannot die. More specifically, I can't seem to stay dead. I've died hundreds of times, maybe even thousands. I stopped keeping track years ago. I'm stuck in this never-ending cycle where I die an extremely painful death, and then I wake up again moments later, alive. Over and over and over and over. The same exact thing keeps happening to me and it's really starting to piss me off. I know exactly who is responsible for this. It was that Mary Laurie who put this curse on me because I slept with her husband years ago. I didn't know she was a witch, and if I had known, I would have stayed away from her husband in the first place. Now that I think back to that time, I realize that the affair wasn't even worth it. But I guess it's much too late now because here I am, alive for the 100 and something time or whatever. Do you know how exhausting it is to just keep living? To die knowing that you will just wake up and do it all over again, never being able to find peace? I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Well, actually, scratch that. I would wish this on Mary Laurie in a heartbeat just so that I could watch her relive the same torture over and over again. That might make me feel better, if only for a few years. Anyway, I need to know how I can get into the afterlife. I honestly don't even care if it's heaven or hell or some weird in between, or even if there isn't one. I just want to cross over and stay dead. I wasn't religious in my first life. Most people were, but that was just never really my thing. If you would have asked me way back then, I would have said that there was no such thing as an afterlife, that there's nothing but death. You're alive, you die, then you simply cease to exist and that's the end. Now, due to changing circumstances, my thoughts have changed. I know there's an alternative to being stuck on Earth forever because I've felt it. Every single time I have died, I've felt something, like an energy, trying to pull me into whatever the place is. I never get in though, because just when I start to think that maybe this time I'll somehow slip right through, I'm back on Earth. It's always in a new body. I used to think it was a random body that I fell into, and for a while, I thought I was taking over the body of someone who was about to die. But now I know that it's neither one of those. I always end up in the bodies of people who are alone, and I mean alone. No friends, no family, no job, no happiness. It's miserable, and in any other situation I would feel bad for these people. But it's really hard to have compassion when you're stuck living their lives while they get a way out. I don't know where it is that they go when I take over, but my guess is that they get to cross over while I get to continue on, living their lives until I die. I've tried many different things to cross over and not a single one has worked. I'm writing this because I'm hoping that maybe someone will see this and be able to tell me what the hell I'm supposed to do to break this stupid curse. And before you suggest this, because I know that someone will, killing myself won't work. I've tried it, multiple times to be exact. I've tried getting myself killed by another person, I've tried doing it myself, and I've even tried making it look like an accident by throwing myself into oncoming traffic. Speaking of traffic, those cars seem really handy and made it fairly easy to die. The point is, killing myself doesn't work and neither does natural death. And the worst thing is that every single time I die, it is excruciatingly painful, no matter the reason. I've died from old age multiple times and somehow even that hurt like a prick. I really thought for a while that once Mary died, this spell might break and let me be, but she died years ago and here I am. A few years back, I did a ton of research on how to get into the afterlife. I learned that the ancient Egyptians believed doing good deeds would get you into the afterlife, and so that's what I did. I spent 2 entire lifetimes doing good deeds for people, and look how well that worked out for me. The Mesopotamians believed that everybody got into the afterlife upon dying, but of course, I wouldn't know if they're correct or not. Christians believe in heaven and hell, but I've yet to see either of those things, unless you count my current reality as hell. A few other religions don't believe in an existence after death, which I also used to once believe. But again, that doesn't seem to be true for me. I read about Hades and the underworld, the different realms in Norse religion, a limbo between life and death, purgatory, and reincarnation, which seems to be the closest thing to what I'm experiencing. However, I haven't really seen any evidence of being able to vividly remember your past lives. Most of my research states that there are indeed certain ways to connect with your past lives, but I don't think this is a scenario that I'm living in. Or maybe I'm just wrong and we're all in the afterlife and this is as good as it gets. But I really hope not. I just really need to find a way to die and stay dead. That's all I want. I can feel that I'm starting to break. I'm going crazy. Nobody should have to live this long. I'm begging you, if anyone knows how to get me into the afterlife, please tell me. I can't take this anymore and I don't know what I might do if I die and wake up in yet another body. I need to cross over to wherever it is that dead people go, not just so I can finally stop living, but also so I can track down Mary Laurie's spirit and get some revenge of my own. "11:50 p.m. It started with a simple text to the group chat. It was sent by Ella at 11:34 p.m. and simply asked, "Is anyone awake?" As luck would have it, we were all awake, all 6 of us. Once we replied, Ella followed up with another text. This one was of a location, a large empty field off the side of one of the main roads. And about 10 minutes later, we were all at the field, standing around while Ella pulled multiple shovels out of her truck. Harvey pulled out 2 fold-out chairs from his car and set them up near the area where we had all parked our cars. I took a seat in one and watched as the rest of them helped Ella. It was like some kind of bizarre supernatural occurrence. That's as best as I can describe the unanimous, overwhelming feeling to dig. And now, we're digging a hole. Correction, they're digging a hole. I'm still sitting in the fold-out chair, watching them. It's past midnight now and the hole is pretty deep. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe a couple of feet, like 5 or 6. I don't even know how they dug this much, this fast, but they did and they haven't stopped. I've also had the urge to dig, like the others, but there's a small part of me, a really tiny part, that's telling me not to, and for some reason, I feel like I should listen to it. They haven't asked me to help. When they started digging, Maria handed me a shovel, but it's still on the ground near my feet, waiting for me to pick it up and use it. No one said a word the entire time we've been here. It's fascinating, really, the sort of trance that they're all in, and I'm wondering what it was that compelled them to dig. It can't have been a coincidence, the fact that we all happened to be awake at the same time and decided to all sneak out and come out here to dig, no questions asked. I get up every few minutes and wander over to the hole to get a look at their work so far, but there's really not much to see. I mean, it's a giant deep hole that they've been going at for the past hour or so. It's not exactly breaking news, you know. It's strikingly calm out here in the dead of night. I can count on one hand the number of cars that have passed through here since we arrived, and all I can really hear out here is the chirping of crickets and the sounds of shovels breaking through the dirt, followed by the sound of the dirt being thrown out of the hole. A few minutes ago, a thought came into my head. How are they going to get back out of the hole? It's a few inches taller than all of them now, and I'm thinking of ways that they could get out. I guess it's a good thing that I stayed out here. They're probably going to need my help when they're done. If they ever decide to stop, that is. Right now, there seems to be no sign of that. They don't appear to be tired, even though they haven't stopped digging for even a second since they started. 1:42 a.m. I got up to check on them again just a second ago, and the hole has got to be over 10 feet deep now. I don't even know how they managed to get that far down, but they're still going. I'm starting to get a bit worried now, as I really don't know how they're going to get out of this. Even with my help from out here, it's not going to be easy. There's no rope or anything for them to use to get out, and if they keep going, it's just going to be that much harder for them to get back up here. I find myself reaching for the shovel every once in a while to help, but I manage to stop myself right before I start walking towards the hole. I would have to jump down now in order to even get in, and it's a big fall now. The calmness of the night has started to feel unsettling. I keep expecting something to happen. I don't know what I'm waiting for, but it isn't something good. I can't help but notice how much sweatier my palms have gotten in the last couple of minutes. I keep having to stop to wipe them on my sweats. My shoulders feel tense and I feel like I just drank all the caffeine in the world. I'm trying to focus on taking deep breaths, and all I can smell is the scent of soil around me. I keep scanning the road and the rest of the field, but nothing has changed. The only things around are our cars and the billboard for a law firm at the other end of the field. There's a gas station across the field, but it's been closed for a couple of months now, so there's no one around the area. The nearest homes are about a 5-minute walk from here, so there's a heavy, chilling silence hanging over the area. There's an intersection near the right side of the field, and I keep finding myself entranced by the changing lights. It's odd how long a green light seems to last when you're not driving. 3 a.m. They're still digging. They haven't stopped once, and I'm starting to get the feeling that something is wrong. The last time I approached the hole to see their process, the most intense feeling of fear fell over me and nearly knocked me off my feet. I found myself getting increasingly more anxious the closer that I got until I was basically dragging myself and hyperventilating. I managed to get a peek into the hole and they seemed to be miles away from the surface now. I felt the knot in my stomach turn into nausea and emptied my stomach to the side of the hole before crawling back to my chair, where I had to close my eyes and breathe to get my surroundings to stop spinning. Once I calmed down, I opened my eyes again and took a look around. Nothing had changed, except now the sounds of their digging were quieter and much further away. I keep reaching for the shovel, even though I don't want to. At one point, I found myself walking towards the hole, holding the shovel, with no memory of ever getting up. I threw the shovel over the hole to the other side of the field, and the same feeling as before washed over me. I ran away, back to my spot in the chair before it got as bad as the last time. I'm starting to think I should go home, but I can't bring myself to leave my friends behind. 4:14 a.m. The sun is going to rise in a bit over an hour, and the street will start to get busy. Maybe they'll stop by then and somehow get out. I made my way to the edge of the hole again earlier. I just slowly inched towards it, thinking that maybe the feeling would have hit me all at once if I took my time getting there, and I was surprisingly correct. I stood at the edge and looked down into the tunnel they had now created. I couldn't even see them anymore, and the only reason I knew that they were still there was because of the faint sounds of their shovels hitting the earth beneath them. I could vaguely catch glimpses of Renata's blonde hair when the moonlight hit it at a specific angle, but that was pretty much it. And I wondered how they could keep going when they were as blind in the dark as I was. I saw a man walking on the other side of the road earlier, but he didn't seem to notice me. Or perhaps he just didn't care. Not many others have passed through here, but I know the street will become much more alive once everyone is up and on their morning commute to work. Now that I think about it, I can't remember if I worked today. I guess that's not really important right now. I found a flashlight and some rope in Rogelio's car, but it's no longer long enough to help them get up. I'm still waiting for them to stop and realize how far down they've gone and start asking me for help, but that doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. 5:59 a.m. The sun was supposed to rise at 5:51 a.m. I looked it up. I suppose I can't exactly say that it didn't rise because it technically did. It's up in the sky, a burning ball of light, but it isn't illuminating anything. The sky looks like someone pinned a round yellow circle on the black background and called it a day. There's no light in the sky except for the small circle that is supposed to be the sun. Everything is still black. And they're not done digging. I'm starting to get hungry, but I feel bad about leaving my friends behind, even if I no longer think they're ever going to come back up. The streets are still empty, which is really bizarre. People should be getting up for work now, and yet the day is still. I was thinking about whether or not I should leave now, and that's when they started crying. It was very soft at first, and I almost missed it. but when I focused, it was clear that it was coming from inside the earth. I approached it carefully, but the volume of the crying didn't really change much, and I realized that was because it wasn't just coming from inside the hole. It was coming from underground, all over. It had to have been at least a few dozen voices, their sobs ripping through the earth. I ran towards the hole and looked down, using the flashlight to get a better look around. They were dead. All 6 of them were laying on their backs, deep in the earth, bloody and staring up at me. And yet I could still hear the faint sound of shovels working their way through the dirt. I backed away and ran to my car, and right as I got in, I felt the ground begin to shake. I started my car and pulled out of the field and onto the road, heading home. As I got further away from the field, I glanced back at the field through my rearview mirror to see 2 smoky hands coming out of the hole.